It was Halloween night in 2002. The moon was high in the sky and the chill ran down the spines of two young siblings as they approached their home in the quiet hours of the morning. As they entered the home, they were met with a blood-curdling sight. Their screams echoed through the walls as the siblings stumbled back in terror. Marisia and Manfred, the loving mother and father of Suzanne and Andreas, lay lifeless on the ground. They were brutally murdered. What could possibly lead to such a heinous act? Who was the mastermind behind this horrendous crime? The answers to these questions and much more are hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. Join us as we unravel the mystery behind the Halloween murders of 2002. Suzane von Richthofen was born in 1983 in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Her parents were Manfred, a German engineer who worked as a director for a company that took care of the highways, and Marisia, a Lebanese-Brazilian psychiatrist. Suzane had a younger brother named Andreas, who was 4 years younger than her. Growing up, Suzane and Andreas were given the best education possible. They attended the most prestigious private schools in the city. As a result, their academic abilities were honed, leading to a bright future for both the siblings. Suzane was a reserved young lady who was often on the quieter side. She didn't have a lot of popularity among her peers, but she did have a close group of friends and a good relationship with her parents and brother. Throughout her childhood, Suzane developed an impressive ability to speak 3 different languages. After completing her high school education at a German institution, Suzane continued her studies at the Pontifical Catholic University of Sao Paulo, where she pursued a law degree. With her background in law, it was assumed that Suzane would lead a lawful and upright life. Suzane was blessed with a financially secure background. Her family's wealth was estimated to be $17 million. Her father took it a step further and opened a Swiss bank account under her name, which held 10 million euros. Growing up, she had all the luxuries and opportunities for a good education. She didn't have to worry about money, as all the family's wealth was planned to be hers after she finished her studies. All that was required of her was to complete her education and maintain her integrity. In the summer of 1999, the von Richthofen family visited the Ibirapuera Park for a model aircraft fair. Little Andreas, who had a passion for model planes, met a boy named Daniel Cravenhose. Unlike Andreas, Daniel was older, wild, and led a vastly different lifestyle. Andreas expressed his desire to learn airplane models from Daniel in front of his parents. His parents not only permitted him to learn from Daniel, but also agreed to pay Daniel for his coaching. Suzane noticed her younger brother's new friend and soon found herself drawn to Daniel's charisma and rebellious nature. She began dating Daniel, who introduced her to drugs and took her virginity. Although Daniel was 6 years older than Suzane, she was excited by the thrill of the forbidden and would sneak off to meet him behind her parents' back. Daniel saw Suzane as a way to a better life because she was a rich girl with wild access to money. Daniel had a difficult childhood and dropped out of school early to work as a mechanic with his older brother Christian. When Suzane started dating Daniel, she was worried about how her parents would react, and so she kept the relationship a secret. Eventually, her parents found out. Daniel lied to Suzane's parents and said he built airplane models and was studying law, but they soon discovered the truth. Suzane's parents were initially okay with her relationship with Daniel, but things changed when they discovered more about him. They discovered that he used marijuana regularly and wasn't willing to work or study. At first, they hoped that their daughter would end the relationship, but instead, it only got stronger. Suzane's parents forbade her from seeing Daniel, but she continued their relationship despite their objections. Andreas also helped Suzane keep her relationship with Daniel a secret. Everything was going smoothly until July 2002, when the parents went away on a vacation for a few days. With her parents gone, Suzane took it as a perfect opportunity to have a little fun with her boyfriend behind her parents' back. So, she invited Daniel over to her place. They spent their days sitting by the pool, using drugs and smoking weed. Daniel brought drugs for Suzane, and in return, she rewarded him with expensive gifts and money. But when the parents came back from the vacation and learned what their daughter was doing behind their backs, they became furious. Suzane and her parents clashed in a heated confrontation over her love for Daniel. This situation escalated quickly, and her parents forbade her from seeing him again. But Suzane was not willing to give up the love of her life for their sake. She stood her ground and refused to back down. She passionately argued with them and demanded a place of her own where she and Daniel could live together. but her father refused, stating that she could only have what she wanted if she earned money herself. Naturally, this didn't sit well with Suzanne, and she took a drastic step in response. On the night of October 30th, 2002, 15-year-old Andreas von Richthofen was experiencing an unforgettable evening. His sister Suzane and her boyfriend Daniel had taken him out of the house and brought him to an LAN party in Sao Paulo, Brazil, where they often played games. However, Suzane and Daniel did not stay that night, and Andreas joined some friends for a gaming session. Later in the evening, the young couple picked Andreas up and headed home. Upon reaching home, they found something that they could have never imagined in their wildest imagination. In front of them laid motionless the bodies of their parents, completely covered in blood. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie, but this wasn't any movie. Sadly, it was reality. The crime scene at the von Richthofen residence was a gruesome sight. The once peaceful bedroom had become a site of violence and brutality. The lifeless bodies of Manfred and Marisia lay tangled in their sheets, beaten beyond recognition. The room told a story of a merciless attack, with evidence pointing to multiple methods of murder used by the perpetrators. As the police further examined the scene, they noticed evidence of a strangulation around the neck of both victims. One of the victims appeared to have been subjected to waterboarding, while Marisia had a garbage bag tightly tied around her head. At first, it appeared as though the family had been robbed, as money had been taken from a suitcase and other cash-filled areas were now empty. However, as the officers continued their investigation, they realized that things were not as straightforward as they had initially seemed. The alarm system did not alert guards. It seemed it had been disarmed, pointing to inside knowledge by the attackers. The neat appearance of the office and the uniform distribution of papers suggested a planned attack. No forced entry or stolen electronic devices were found, and some rooms were left untouched. These findings indicated that the attack was carefully planned and also raised suspicions about the involvement of a family member. When police questioned Suzanne and Andreas, inconsistencies emerged. Suzanne told the police that her parents supported her relationship with Daniel, while her brother's statements contradicted this. The police observed that Andreas was deeply upset and struggled to breathe at the news of his parents' death, while Suzanne appeared to be normal. The cameras captured a noticeable shift in her behavior. At her parents' funeral, she wept less than her brother and even hosted a pool party just 3 days after her parents were killed. These suspicions were further fueled when police learned about the recent purchase of a Suzuki GSX motorcycle, which was bought by Daniel's older brother Christian 1 day after the murder of Marisia and Manfred. It was surprising that Christian, who had a history of drug use and financial issues, could even afford such a bike. So police called him in for questioning, and despite his tough demeanor, he quickly confessed to the crime. He admitted that he, with the help of Suzanne and Daniel, had murdered Marisia and Manfred. At this discovery, police arrested both Daniel and Suzanne, but their stories didn't match as the investigation continued. Additionally, they broke up after being detained. Despite being detained, Suzanne was eventually released until the trial, which started 4 years later. During this time, she gave an interview where she acted sad and falsely accused Daniel. But her act was exposed when a hidden camera caught her lawyer instructing her how to cry and appear innocent. On July 17, 2006, Suzanne, Daniel, and Christian were put on trial for first-degree murder in Brazil. The jury heard the details of what happened on Halloween night in 2002. That night, Suzanne snuck out of the house with Andreas while their parents were fast asleep. Andreas's intentions were good, but Suzanne had evil plans. She returned home with Daniel and Christian and disabled the alarm before checking on her parents. Then, Daniel and Christian entered the living room wearing surgical gloves and hoods. Daniel and Christian headed upstairs with crowbars, while Suzanne sat on her parents' sofa. They beat Marisia and Manfred until they could take no more, then wrapped them in towels and strangled them. Manfred passed away at this time, but Marisia was still breathing, so they used a plastic bag to kill her. Following the murder, they feigned a break-in and stole money. Daniel and Suzanne spent the night together at a motel, while Christian went to a fast food restaurant to fabricate an alibi. The next morning, they picked up Andreas from an LAN party and went back home. Suzanne acted surprised when she saw the crime scene, but it was all just an act. On trial, Suzanne blamed Daniel Cravenhose, while the Cravenhose brothers said they did it on her orders. The prosecutors called Suzanne the mastermind and asked for 50 years in prison for each of them. Eventually, in 2006, Suzanne, Daniel, and Christian were all sentenced to prison. Suzanne and Daniel each received 40 years, and Christian received 38 years for his involvement in the crime. Suzanne von Richthofen's case is a tragic tale of greed and manipulation. Despite coming from a wealthy family, Suzanne fell into a life of drugs and crime, which ultimately led to her involvement in the murder of her own parents. Meanwhile, Andreas suffered greatly after the loss of his parents and with his sister's role in their murder. He battled addiction and eventually lost his mind, a far cry from the hopeful future he once had. Thank you for watching True Crime Prime. Kindly subscribe to our channel and remember to like, share, and comment.